Welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast, the resource for transitional and experienced genealogists who want to create a successful business. I'm your host, Marion Pierre-Louis. Here you'll learn from professionals all around the world who work in the field of genealogy. Are you ready to learn and grow together? Then let's get started. This podcast is sponsored in part by the Association of Professional Genealogists. You can find out more about them at www.apgen.org. Welcome to episode 11 of the Genealogy Professional Podcast. Today we venture across the sea to Israel to spend some time with genealogist Israel Pickholtz. Israel, welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Morning to you, Marion. Here it's afternoon, but I know it's your morning.
Good afternoon back to you. Let's get started by having you tell us about yourself and give us an overview of your genealogy business.
Okay, it's kind of hard to draw a line between me and my business, so I'll start with me. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, the home of GRIP. All my grandparents came to the United States before World War I. In the case of my father, my grandmother was born in the United States, but all of her older brothers and sisters were born in Budapest. My grandfather came when he was 7 years old, so those were both with their parents. They came from East Galicia, which was at the time Austria, later Poland, and now Ukraine. My mother's parents came individually as young people without their parents just before World War I from the Minsk area. They had known each other there. Most of their brothers and sisters came as well. I got involved in genealogy seriously. I had been collecting things over the years. 20 years ago at my grandmother's 90th birthday party, I have a first cousin in Wasilla, and her 9-year-old daughter asked me for what I had done. And I said, give me a few days to get things organized, and I've been getting things organized ever since. I've been in Israel for 40 years and been doing genealogy professionally for 6.
Okay, so this is a little bit of a tangent, but I have to ask, when your ancestors, did they arrive to Pittsburgh area, or were they somewhere else first in the United States?
Yes, my father's parents both came straight to Pittsburgh. My father's aunt had come earlier, so they came there. I'm not sure what brought my father's mother's people specifically there. My grandparents on my mother's side originally lived in New York, and after the town of Vandergrift was founded, they took an opportunity to come there and open a business, and they were in Vandergrift, which is outside of Pittsburgh.
All right, so that's what I'm curious about. When they came to Pittsburgh area, what was the trade or profession that they started in? I'm just curious.
My mother's father was an upholsterer, and he opened a furniture store. My father's maternal grandfather was an engineer, was a civil engineer, and in the United States he called himself a cabinet maker, but he was already near retirement. Didn't have retirement then, but he was already older then. My great-grandfather on my father's side was a glazier, which I'm not sure if he learned once he was in the United States.
All right. Well, thank you for satisfying my curiosity. So most people come to genealogy from another profession. What were you doing before you became a genealogy professional?
I was a mining economist.
What did you do as a mining economist? What does a mining economist do?
I did economic studies of the mining operation, and I did budget and cost accounting. I was offered an early retirement package 6 years ago, and it gave me about half of what I was making, and I decided to take clients as a way to fill that up. That's when I started getting into genealogy, because I had been doing it for a number of years for myself. When
you took this early retirement and you decided to take clients, what did you do to prepare yourself to become a professional genealogist, both from an educational point of view and from a business skill point of view? Because as an economist, you had some business skills, but they would have been focused more on finance and economics, whereas genealogy, your own genealogy business is going to demand more skills of you.
Well, over the years, I had been networking and practicing and attending conferences of the International Association of Jewish Genealogical Societies and doing a little bit of volunteering there. And I had the contacts, and I just decided, let's start charging people and getting into things. It was a pretty smooth transition. I didn't do any preparation per se. And I let the business side take care of itself.
What skills did you bring to your business when you started it, and how have they helped you?
Location. This is the center of Jewish life here in Jerusalem. Language, Hebrew and English, which is not a whole big deal. Lots of people speak both Hebrew and English and other things, but those are my two, and I do them both well. I have a very good memory so that when I see a piece of information that fits with something that I saw even a couple of years ago or more, there's a good chance that I'm going to remember that it fits with it. And I have a good knowledge of, Judaism and customs and all of that.
Now, you say that being located in Israel is an advantage. It's the center for the research that you do, but I would imagine that you very quickly have to go back to Eastern Europe or other original locations where Jewish people came from. So how do you handle that? Are there many resources from those places in Israel, or
some?
How do you handle that?
Some. There's something called the Central Archives of History of the Jewish People, which holds a lot of material. There was material that came over from Europe because the communities there knew that they weren't sustainable. That's number one. Number two, the Holocaust research is here. And number three, when I need things in Europe, there are either resources online through Jewish Gen or from other places, and there are local people there that I use from time to time as necessary in Europe.
So the Jewish community is much like other immigrant communities in that you have what they call a diaspora. You've got people all over the world. Does Jewish Gen or the Genealogy Society or whoever is organizing most of the Jewish genealogy, are they really acting as the force to centralize all the research and make it available so that it's not location specific? Or is it being collected and saying, okay, we're going to maintain this in Israel or the United States? Or how all does that work?
They do certainly try to organize everything under one roof. The International Association of Jewish Genealogy Societies, it calls itself international, and is international, but it's American. The 4 out of 5 conferences will be in the United States. Jewish Gen has international resources, but it's an American organization. People say, when did your ancestors come here? And everybody knows they mean to America, even though for many of us it doesn't mean to America. They're United States centric.
What are some of the other locations that have that are centers of the Jewish diaspora? Because is Argentina one? Do you have
Argentina? There are Jews in Argentina. There are lots of Jews in Argentina. There are Jews in any number of places in Europe. There are Jews in Australia. There are Jews most places. So not so much the Far East, but most other places.
Yeah. So I'm asking these questions as
South Africa.
I'm a complete novice here. So
there's a Jewish community in Cuba. When they wouldn't take them anyplace else, and Cuba would take them, we went to Cuba.
So what skills did you lack when you started your business, and how did you overcome that?
Patience. Patience is what I didn't have. ADD is what I do have. You deal with it.
Have you come up with any tricks to deal with that? Do you mean patience in terms of waiting for records, or patience in terms of discovering the information that you need? What kind of patience is required in your work?
Patience. Just things don't go as fast as you want. People don't answer as fast as you want. But patience is also the solution to some of these things. You have to learn how to do it. It's not anything I grew up with.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I think that being a genealogical researcher has actually taught me patience. Mm-hmm. Because when I send something off in the mail to cemetery staff or something like that and hoping that they will respond, I have no preconception of when they may respond to me. It could be 6 months. So I think it's really helped a lot.
That's right. You have to be able to draw the line between putting it in your follow-up file too soon and putting it in the follow-up file too late.
Mm-hmm. What was the hardest part of starting a genealogy business?
Discipline. I work from home. My wife is very cooperative. She does very little of, as long as you're there, do the wash or something like that. But I have a self-discipline issues. I'd rather read about American politics or American sports, which I'm a kind of a junkie of both. And it's discipline to sit down and do the work that has to be done, plus the fact that there's a discipline to doing the client work when I'd kind of like to do my own genealogy work.
Do you have an office in your house that actually has a door on it that you can...
I have an office that has a door on it. It does not have a window in it, but it has a door.
Okay, so
it's 2 meters by 4 meters, and I live here.
Yeah, so you can, if you can attempt at the discipline, at least you have the separation from the rest of the house, which...
Oh, yes.
I don't...
Oh, yeah, I can't hear the doorbell from where I am.
Can you share a story of an obstacle you encountered at some point in your career and how you worked around it?
Well, I'm kind of a Neanderthal. My basic genealogy program that I use is Brother's Keeper for DOS. Although I have the Windows, I don't use it. I don't like learning new things when I don't have to. I am the I don't want to say bomb thrower, but I'm one of those who object to the online collaborative trees that you find on some of the big outfits, because I don't think people should work like that. I do things the old way, and that's an obstacle because I don't get as modern and up to date as I might like to.
So how do you work around that?
And my older children are no longer in the house, so I can't ask them how to do it.
You could always email them.
Yes, I could.
But so,
they might answer.
But how do you work around this? Say you're in a situation where, for instance, I wanted to call you via Skype, and you said, why don't you just call me on the phone? What do you do in situations like that?
Oh, I use Skype, but my Skype isn't as, we wouldn't have as good a connection if we use Skype, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, I do what I have to do. I have people I consult with. But I'd rather not if I don't have to.
Okay, so that's your solution is, if you're in a situation where you have to resolve something, you might hire a consultant to help you.
Perhaps.
Or
just use my networking to do it. Ask this friend or that friend.
Okay.
But then I can do some things that they don't do. So, it's a trade-off. It's a fair trade.
What was the hardest part of starting a genealogy business for you, or wasn't there a difficult part? Did you just get started?
No, I just did. I just went into it because I just added that to the things that I did in my day.
Were there any issues specific to Israel, such as business licensing or anything, that you have to take out a business license locally in your city or anything like that?
No. The one thing that is a problem is the United States. I am a citizen of the United States, and the United States is one of the only civilized countries in the world that requires income tax from its citizens, even if they are non-resident, and even if they are already paying income tax where they are resident. And although we have an arrangement with them on salaries, anything that I make as a self-employed person or as a business owner, I am paying taxes both here and in the United States. And even if I weren't, I'd be required to fill out tax returns, which is an expense. That's an issue.
That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Mm-hmm. And it's peculiar to the United States. Most civilized countries don't do that.
Tell us about a moment in your business when you felt like you really started to gel with what you were doing. You were feeling very confident about your business. You had a lot of experience and things were just running smoothly for you.
Right after the Holocaust, a couple married in Poland. He was an only child. She had a brother with kids. They had a severely retarded daughter. It's the only child they ever had. Both families came here in 1957. The father died. The mother died. The severely retarded daughter inherited, and the cousins took care of her. When she died, the assets that she had were to be divided between her father's family, which there wasn't any because he was an only child, and the mother's family. And an attorney said to me, "Prove to me that this fellow who was born in Poland in 1912 was an only child." That was a very difficult thing because Poland has a 100-year rule on anything. Until 100 years are passed, all vital records are private and don't even go to the archives. I was able to show that his parents had 5 other children, two of whom died before he was born. The other 3 we found nothing about. No deaths, no marriages. Nobody looked for them after the Holocaust. They didn't look for anybody. Nothing. We had nothing at all about them. So I had to go back to him, and I said, "I don't know if this man was an only child." And he said, "Okay." And he paid me. And he didn't say, oh, that's terrible, and you didn't do a good job. So I felt that I could do this straightforwardly and honestly, and it would work.
Many genealogists offer a wide array of services such as writing, speaking, and client reports. How did you determine what services you wanted to offer to grow your business?
Well, originally I thought there were two kinds of things. There were projects and there were errands. Projects being kind of open-ended and errands being go find this grave or go find this document. And I really preferred errands because it fit with my lifestyle, with my ADD and everything else. But I found there was something else. I got a number of references to attorneys, and the attorney side has grown considerably. I've been doing a lot of work for attorneys, whether it's here or whether it's people abroad looking for information here, people here looking for information from abroad. And a lot of that has to do with inheritance, demonstrate that so-and-so had no children or whatever. Some of that is Holocaust-related, but not all of it. And I like working for attorneys. Among other things, they bring repeat business.
What about speaking and writing? Do you do any of that?
I do, but it's only in the sense of maybe something will come of it, not because anybody's paying me to do it.
Okay, so you're doing it more to share the information that you have with others?
And to get my name out there, and so on and so on. And whenever I go to speak someplace, I kind of hope something will come of it, and nothing ever does. But at least people know who I am, and I enjoy doing it anyway. Okay,
so you're using public speaking as a marketing tool more than an income generation, which...
A marketing tool, it's an ego thing, too.
Well, some people like to speak, and other people don't like to speak, but they do it anyways. So I'm guessing...
I have spoken at some of our conferences.
And you enjoy it?
Oh, yes.
So what were the services when you first started? And then, how has that changed over time to what you're offering now? You've already mentioned the heir research that you're doing for attorneys.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I had not given any consideration to at all, and that came up about 2 years ago, and that is there are people in Europe in the 1930s who, as things began getting bad, bought property or other assets outside of Europe, and nothing ever came of those. These people were killed, their families, their extended families were killed, and governments have been benefiting from this unclaimed property, and some of this is now becoming more available to the heirs, and we have to find the heirs. And that's a whole different kettle of fish. I'm doing it on a contingency basis. I'm not going to say which governments are involved in this, but I'm doing it on a contingency basis, and nothing has come of it so far, although we've found some heirs. Most of them don't want to talk to me.
It's really interesting that you bring this up, because this is in a similar but separate from the specific situation you're talking about. This is also a growing concern in the United States, unrelated to the Holocaust, the issue of unclaimed property. So, for example, in my little town in the countryside here, we have plots of land that nobody's paid taxes on for 50 or 100 years, and it goes just unclaimed, and it just sits there until somebody decides that they want to buy that property. And there are starting to be people who are doing this kind of research where they're needing to track down the heirs. And then they approach them and see if they want the land, by paying the back taxes or not. And then it becomes mobile property again, so to speak, in terms of being able to sell. And it seems it's a very unknown kind of thing that's going on in the United States, and it sounds like very similar to what you're doing, and it's all focused on the land as opposed to the will.
And the people you call don't trust you. They don't know who you are. They don't, and you can't give them all the information, because if you give them all the information, they're going to try to find some other way to get around paying the commission.
Right. Well, you can't blame them for not trusting you.
I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying it's a difficult and frustrating sort of a thing. And as I say, I've been doing it for 2 years and haven't seen a penny from it yet.
Right. And I think that's why it's not a widely known about service, just because I think it is so difficult.
I had one person who I found and was ready to do it, and then we found out. And then she told us that because she had political disagreements with her mother disinherited her.
My goodness.
So she wasn't even entitled to what she was entitled to.
Do you have any other unique services that you offer besides the heir research and this unclaimed land research?
I don't know about unique. I mean, as I say, people need the language skills that I have sometimes. I'm not worried about competition. There's enough business to keep people going, kind of, I suppose. I mean, I'm not dependent on it as a complete livelihood since I have the partial pension. To sound like I know what I'm talking about, that always impresses people.
What kind of things do people ask you to do in Israel? For instance, going and photographing graves, what kinds of things do people ask you to do, specific to Israel?
Well, I've had cases where people in America have said, there were a lot of cases where older Jews would come here to die, and family in America or in England or wherever don't know where the grave is. And some of these were before 1948 when the state was established, and in Jerusalem in particular, the Mount of Olives was occupied by Jordanians for 19 years, and they did a huge amount of destruction within the cemetery. Finding graves is difficult. Finding the stones is difficult if they're there. Sometimes I've had to replace the stones, that is, drag them back to where they belong, or put up new ones. I've done some of that. That's one kind of thing. Sometimes it's just a document. You also have people who want to establish foreign citizenship because some of the European countries are trying to attract some of their Jews back and are offering citizenship. And I've had people who say they're looking to prove their Polish descent so that they can get Polish citizenship, which then leads to EU citizenship.
What would be the attraction both for the countries in Europe that are trying to attract the Jews back? From their point of view, why are they trying to attract the Jews back? And then also, from the Jewish point of view, what would be the attraction of actually going to the effort of getting Polish citizenship or some other country?
Polish citizenship is now, since Poland is a member of the EU, Polish citizenship is an entryway to getting a European passport, which makes it easier to do any number of things for some people. Why the Europeans are doing this, I don't know. This is international relations that I'm not involved in. Just things are becoming easier and more friendly, and then we have what to offer, I guess.
What has been the most challenging aspect of being a genealogy professional from a business point of view?
Well, the taxes, as I say, and the heirs who won't talk to me, and those are the top of my list.
How do you balance paid work versus volunteering? Do you have networks in Israel for volunteering, or are you mostly volunteering when you do it with an organization like Jewish Den?
Well, some of volunteering means people ask questions on discussion lists, and you go and do it, and you say, I haven't turned the meter on, and don't tell anybody because I have a reputation to maintain. Some of it is organized. The National Library here has been trying to get more involved in genealogy in order to provide services to people, so they have a number of us coming once or twice a month to meet people who want help, and I have helped out some people like that. I have a once-a-month volunteer slot there. And some of it's just on a whim. There's something that needs done, and somebody says who's going to do it, and I'll do it, or I won't do it.
What is the most fun project that you've ever worked on that you can share?
About the beginning of the summer, I got a note from a woman here in Israel, her name is Louise, asking me to do some research on her family, a rabbinic family that I knew nothing about. And I was on my way to the United States, and she was busy and so on. I said, talk to me after the holidays, which here was 2 months ago. And she came back. I said, I deleted everything she wrote. I said, let's start from the beginning then. She came back to me then and said, the family I'm looking for is called Gnivish, and I want to come and meet with you. So we set a week and a half later that she was going to come to my office. In between that week and a half, the library had a seminar on rabbinic research that I attended. And one of the fellows who presented was talking about a particular rabbinic line. And in the course of that, he said, and one of the daughters married Pinchas Gnivish. And I said, oh, I know who that is. I mean, that's what Louise is looking for. So when Louise came to my office a few days later, I said, I just heard a lecture all about somebody who knows who your family is. So I put them in contact here from my office, and they met. And she's got a volume of work that has handwritten notes that he didn't have, and he knows things that she didn't know, and they each know people that the other didn't know. And this was wonderful. And then last week I was doing some consulting at the library for my monthly gig a couple of weeks ago. And a fella comes in, a fella named Eisenthal, and he said, can you explain to me, I want to know how my Eisenthals got their name when they were actually descendants of Gnivish. So I get this fella again to come over, and they're all very happy with each other. I have done absolutely nothing. Everybody thinks I'm a genius. That was fun, and it's probably not finished yet.
That is fun. I have a random question about Israel, because I don't know very much about Israel. And I'm just curious about a couple things. Hebrew is the language that's spoken in Israel, but you have many expats from the United States who live in...
From every place. We have expats from every place.
Okay, but you have a lot from the United States as well. Is Hebrew flat out the only language that's spoken in Israel, or do you have people who will communicate in English with each other? And then the second part to my question is, on average, how many people in Israel speak English? You know, I'm imagining if they come from Poland or someplace like that, they aren't necessarily going to be speaking English.
It's taught in the schools, and they see it and hear it on television.
Why?
It's something that most people are familiar with. That doesn't mean they're fluent in it. That doesn't mean they will correspond in it. But many people, I don't want to give percentages here because I have my own perspective on it. But the kids know it, and the kids learn it, and the adults know it. Many.
Okay.
You really need to speak Hebrew when you're here, but you can manage pretty much without it. Some of the older people in their more closed social communities.
For the audience who are not familiar with Jewish genealogy, can you give us a tidbit, one or two things about Jewish genealogy that is unique, that's not encountered in other types, like perhaps the dating system, or, you know, what are some of the typical questions that somebody might ask you when they're starting, you know, down the road in Jewish genealogy? Perhaps they don't even come from a Jewish background, but they've discovered they have Jewish ancestors. What would be surprising to them that would be different from doing other types of genealogy?
Well, they might not know, and the Jews might not know, that in many places in Eastern Europe, most of the Jews, or a large number of the Jews, did not bother reporting their marriages to the authorities, to the civil authorities. So the kids got the mother's name, and the father was often not written on the birth record, although sometimes he would be there affirming paternity. But the kids got the mother's name, and then perhaps they got legally married later when they were going to go to Vienna or someplace more civilized, and the later child might have the father's name. So the whole business of surnames was a bit nebulous. In general, the Jews were not terribly in Eastern Europe, were not terribly trusting of the authorities and didn't have a lot of respect for the authorities. So things like surnames were treated cavalierly. Many of the gravestones, even into the 1930s, do not have surnames on them. So this is an issue. It wasn't something that people took seriously.
Is there a separate system of records, such as in the synagogues, since you say that they didn't trust the authorities and they didn't eagerly go towards civil records? Is there an alternate system of record keeping that the Jewish people amongst themselves kept?
In Eastern Europe, absolutely. The government kept separate records by religious communities. The Jewish records in Poland are separate from the Catholic records in Poland, and have been since the early 1800s. The government kept them that way.
Are there any non-governmental records that Jewish people might have access to, or would those be difficult to find?
Maybe sometimes. You know, you don't want to generalize here too much. And of course, a lot of things that did exist were lost in the normal course of events, or wars, or floods, or fires, or everything else.
Let's take a quick break to hear a message from the Association of Professional Genealogists.
Hello, this is Kimberly Powell, President-elect of the Association of Professional Genealogists. APG is an international membership organization dedicated to supporting all individuals in the business of genealogy, whether you're an archivist, librarian, educator, writer, or researcher. Our 2,600 members include genealogists at all stages of their professional careers, from those just starting out to some of the field's most renowned leaders. Learn how to grow your business and network with other professionals through our educational webinars, informal mentoring groups, active discussion list, the APG Quarterly, and our annual Professional Management Conference. Visit us online at apgen.org to learn how we can help you on your professional journey and how you can help us advance public awareness and understanding of the profession of genealogy.
Okay, Israel, we are now going to enter the lightning round. And I am going to bombard you with a bunch of questions, and you're going to come back with great advice for all the genealogists out there who are listening. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
Okay. What was the one thing you were most afraid of in starting your business?
Self-discipline.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Blog.
What is one specific action listeners can take in the next 24 hours to help them transition into a genealogy career?
Comment on other people's blogs. Comment on other people's written things. Put your name out in public in any way you can that doesn't make you look like a fool.
That's very good advice. Do you have a productivity tool?
That's how you know who I am, because I commented on your...
Yes. And you know what? Let's just stop and talk about that for a minute. Now, I knew who you were before. I knew your name. I was aware of you.
How? Why?
I don't know why. I just try to be aware of
Let
genealogy.
me tell you something. Pickholtz is a name that is both unusual and uncommon. So anybody who ever hears it remembers.
Yeah.
That's always useful.
Yeah, so for our audience, what Israel did is he commented on my blog. And actually what he did was he told me there was a technical error on my blog. And you might think, oh, some people might not be happy to have somebody email them and point out a technical error. In fact, for myself, it's the best thing in the world when somebody calls me and lets me, comments and lets me know that something is wrong with my site, because I might not be aware of it. So he had said that he had signed up for the email list and he wasn't getting the emails. And that one action totally put him on my radar. And then I said, wow, here's a guy in Israel who's listening to this podcast.
And that was part of the reason I did it.
Yeah.
So that you would know who I am.
And that was great. It was really and you are so right. That is one of the best ways to really let people know that you're out there and you want to interact. So Israel's comment about leaving comments on blogs is really, really smart advice, whether you're in genealogy or in a completely different field. But that's really the best way to advance your profile, your networking, is to put yourself out there and look at where we are today. And it's been great. You know, after he sent me that comment and I said, wow, Israel, that would be really cool to have someone from Israel on the show. And then luckily you were agreeable to that. So yeah, that is really good advice. All right. So do you have a productivity tool like Dropbox that you love that you can share with the audience?
I use Dropbox to send things to people. I use Dropbox to receive things from people. The Polish archives have started using Dropbox to send records to people. I don't use it for storage, although I'm thinking about it. There is one productivity tool that I do use, and that is Gmail. And I use Gmail as an intermediary. My email address sits on a server that's in my sister's house in suburban Chicago, and it forwards to Gmail. Gmail then takes out all the spam, and then it goes from there directly to my Israeli email address. And Gmail is very, very useful. It is almost foolproof as far as false positives on the spam, and I don't have any spam.
So that's great. You're using it specifically as a spam filter.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And when I'm lazy, when I'm doing correspondence that I don't need to save, I'll just do the correspondence straight from the Gmail, as you know.
What is your preferred social media channel?
Well, we know that I use Skype, but it doesn't always work. Mm-hmm. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is mostly to collect recommendations. I don't know what else to use it for. I'm not into all of these groups and things. Twitter and Facebook I use a lot. Facebook more for genealogy, but both of them for political comments and things like that. And I have not succeeded in isolating one channel for genealogy. But those are the ones I use.
What is your most common method for interacting, communicating with your clients? Is it face-to-face? Is it telephone?
Email.
Email? Okay.
Email. I hate the telephone.
If you can recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be?
Well, all your people seem to recommend how-to things. I'm not going to recommend something that's how-to. I'm going to recommend something that's inspirational. And it's a book called My 15 Grandmothers by a woman named Jeannie Milgram, who was born and raised as a Catholic in Cuba and later in Miami. And at some point, she traced her 15 grandmothers, and being Jewish goes to the mother. So she traced 15 grandmothers back to before the Inquisition and proved that she was born Jewish based on that. There's a lot more to the story than that, but I think inspirational here is important.
I agree. I think inspirational is very important, especially when it comes to genealogy research. And I think I recently heard about that book. So...
Nick Eastman wrote about it recently.
Okay.
And that's Jeannie, G-E-N-I-E. I heard her speak at the conference in Boston, which is why I was so impressed. I think she's gone back to 22 grandmothers by now.
Give our audience one parting piece of advice, and then tell us how we can get in contact with you.
Write and write and write and get your name out there. If you can do a blog, do a blog. The blog, by the way, that I do a blog once a week. I do a blog once a week almost without qualification. It gives me discipline. And it allows me to get things recorded and out and for discussion. You can get in touch with me by email, israelp at Pickholtz, P-I-K-H-O-L-Z, which is not the way I spell my name, .org.
And you have a website that you want to point people to, or?
I have a website. It is not really fit for consumption right now.
Okay,
but it's there. You can find me through the blog, which is allmyfourparents.blogspot.com. Four Parents, F-O-R-E.
Israel, thank you so much for coming on the Genealogy Professional Podcast today.
Thank you.
For me personally, that was a really interesting and educational interview with Israel. I don't know much about the country of Israel or anything about Jewish genealogy, and that's the reason I was probing him with some questions. I thought it was too good an opportunity to pass up, to learn just a little bit about Jewish genealogy and what some of the issues were affecting researching their heritage, especially when they're dealing with this diaspora issue and coming from one place and either ending up in Israel or the United States or somewhere else. So for me personally, that was very fascinating. I hope that all of you took at least a little bit away from learning something about Jewish genealogy that you might not have known about. So I hope that you gained something from that. In terms of an action item, what I would like to focus on for this week is that very specific thing that we talked about at the end there about commenting on blogs. Israel hit the nail on the head when he said that he specifically comments on blogs, so that people will know about him. And look at how effective it was when he did that on this podcast. He left me a comment, and then I turned around and I said, hey, why don't you come on the show? That would be fascinating. That's a really great thing to do. You can do this with all sorts of blogs that are out there, not necessarily just this podcast, but many people who are blogging, if you're into a particular topic, such as Irish genealogy or Italian genealogy or Jewish genealogy, then what I'd like you to do as your action item is to go seek out these blogs. Where would you like to have a higher profile? I know that even if you're not at the point where you want to become a professional genealogist, if you remember the interview with Caroline Gurney, it was episode number 2. Caroline talked about how she already had a very strong social media presence before she became a professional. And that was because she had a blog and she's out there commenting on other people's blogs, and she was very active in social media. So you can do this at this point too, whether you plan to start a genealogy business soon or not. For your action item, what I would like you to do is think about what would be the best target for you to let people know that you're interested in a certain aspect of the genealogical community. And when you start in genealogy, I think sometimes genealogists feel isolated. They are working on their own from their house, and they don't necessarily have a connection with the greater community. And there's a very large community out there, and it's just a matter of tapping into that community. And then once you do, you'll discover all these people who interface on a regular basis, whether it's via blogs or Facebook or Twitter. And then you say, wow, look at all these people. Everybody knows each other. And yeah, you just have to start and find your entryway into the community and start interacting, start leaving comments. What I would like you to do is think about, well, I would not suggest that you go and try to comment on every blog out there. Focus on something that is particularly relevant to you, like I had suggested, the ethnic genealogy, or a particular region. Maybe there are blogs focused on a particular state or a particular country, something like that. And then once you find those blogs, read the articles. You can't just comment. You need to comment thoughtfully. You need to add and contribute. So you're going to read the blog post, think about what they say, and then give something of value back in your comment. This is not an opportunity for you to just write something quick and then put your name and try to get people to go to your website. That's not the point. What you're trying to do here is to build relationships and let people know that you're out there and grow your community and grow your network. You're probably asking, where am I going to find these blogs? I have no idea how to find a blog. I barely even know what a blog is. And for those of you who don't know what a blog is like a website, and it's a chronological journal where people post their thoughts or their ideas or photographs or whatever. And they're usually pretty thematic. So somebody will have a blog on a topic. It could be a specific topic or it could be a very general topic such as genealogy. And this is a way for people to easily communicate. Blogs are very easy to start. They're free and they're very easy to write, and most people can do it very easily. So the way you find blogs is you go to the Genealogist website by Thomas McKenty, and I will post a link to that in the show notes for this episode. You go to Genealogist and you can search there by topic. So if you want to find German blogs, you can search for it and you'll find a whole bunch of German blogs. So what people have done is people who have blogs, they go to Genealogist and they join the site, and then Thomas lists them and he tags them according to what's appropriate based on the topic of their blog. And so this is a great way for you to find blogs. So figure out what your focus is going to be for your entrance into communicating in this way, commenting on blogs, entering into the genealogical community, and then go to Genealogist and find those blogs that will be the most relevant to you. And you don't have to focus on every single blog you find. Some topics, perhaps like Irish genealogy, might have an awful lot of blogs associated with them. You don't need to comment on every single blog. Perhaps focus on 3 or 4 and get to know those people. Check out the blogs, see which ones interest you the most. Start following them for a week or 2 and comment on the blogs whenever they have a new post. And that's another thing that you can do while you're doing this as an activity to engage with the community. At the same time, also notice how frequently people are blogging. Are they blogging every day, every other day, once a week? And of course, the ones that you're going to gravitate towards, the ones that are going to be of the most interest to you, are the ones that are updating frequently. If you land on a blog that hasn't been updated in 6 months or a year, that's probably not one that's good to start with. Definitely, you'll want to focus on the ones that have been updated in 2014. All right, well, I hope you have learned as much as I have and that you've enjoyed this episode. It's been a real pleasure to host our first non-English speaking country on the Genealogy Professional Podcast. And that's it for this week. So until next week, so long.